The story of my encounter meeting God. In February of 2010, I had this encounter with God seemingly out of nowhere, and it changed my life. So in 2010, I was living in a very rural area. I was working at a local college teaching freshmen. A lot of them were not doing their work properly, maybe not acting 100% properly. And, the college wanted you to sort of be tough with them, act like some things that were going to happen to them were actually not going to happen to them. And it just felt real false to me. And I was just thinking about that, like, that's such a hard thing. That's just not me. And so I was walking around my property, walking my dog, had a little 1 acre, tiny little plot of land in this basically field. And there was a ditch back there. And as I was walking by that ditch, I remembered as a kid playing, in a ditch, just having a good time, just being yourself. And I was like, oh man, those were the days you could kind of just be yourself. And so out of nowhere, nothing special's going on or anything like that. This word comes into my head is the best way to explain it. It's kind of like when you're having a conversation and somebody comments something. It was like somebody could hear those thoughts that I was having, and they put a word in there. They commented on it. They said guilelessness. I was like, I think I know what that means. I'm pretty sure, but like I would never use that word. Later on, upon reflection, I think that's why that came in there. I think that's why God used that word, is because he knew it was something I certainly don't use in everyday language, guilelessness. But it means to be straightforward. He was kind of commenting on what I was thinking about being a kid and just being yourself. Now, as I'm trying to figure out what had just happened, where did this word come into my head from? All of a sudden, this wave hit me, and that's the best way to explain it. A wave of love and also acceptance with the love. And it was almost a physical thing. It was like that close to being physical. You could feel this wave hit you. If you've ever been to the beach and you've been hit by these like little 3 or 4 foot waves, it's like you can almost stand in them, but they almost knock you down, or maybe sometimes they do knock you down. It was like that. It was about the same force and intensity, except that love and acceptance, that wave, it didn't pass me by. It like stayed on me, so to speak. In other words, if there was like a bucket, all of the water from the wave went into that bucket. It stayed. It didn't pass. Now I'm still walking around the yard with my dog, as this is happening. I'm not seeing any strange lights or anything like that. Like all this is going on, you might say, in the interior. If you were looking at me, you would just like, hey, that dude's out there walking in his yard. But in regular intervals, I don't know how long it was, maybe 8 seconds, 10 seconds, I don't know, another wave of this love and acceptance that you could almost physically touch and feel on your skin would hit me. And again, it wouldn't pass by, it would stay. So in other words, I know this is crazy, I don't know how to explain it, but like that first wave, level 1, love and acceptance, another wave on top of that, level 2, you feel more love, more accepted. Like you already felt 100% love and acceptance on the first wave, but somehow with the next wave, you felt even more. I have no words to describe that. I was about 35 at that time, and I mean, nothing like this had ever happened to me. Like you hear all of these stories and experience people, Christians and things have with God, like none of that. If it was going to happen to anybody, it would happen to the guy across the room. If it was going to happen to 29 out of 30 people, I was number 30. Like this stuff did not happen to me. I was not used to experiencing anything like this. I was totally blown away, but I knew instantly, this is God. This is Jesus Christ. This is the Holy Spirit ministering, visiting me right now. Every few seconds, again, more love, more acceptance. It's piling up on me. It was like being in a river, and the water, the love and acceptance, if that was the water, it was rising. Maybe it started out at my ankles. Now it was at my knees, and every few seconds it was getting deeper and deeper. During this time, I'm still walking around the yard with my dog, and I just began to know things. I can't even say it was a download. It was almost like a reaching back into a memory. It wasn't a memory, but that's the closest thing I can say. But I looked at the ground and like I could see the grass, and I began to know, and we all know this, that God knows every blade of grass or something, but it was almost, I was experiencing him knowing it, if that makes sense. Like every vein, every cell in that blade of grass, I kind of experienced God knowing to that level of detail that blade of grass. Also, if you took one of these blades of grass from my yard, brought it to God and say, "Hi, where's this from?" He'd go, "Oh, that's from Michael's yard." It was very personal. He's like, "This is some of your grass." I know that sounds crazy, but he was like, it was almost like a doting grandmother, like, "Oh, I'm going to save this piece of grass because it's from my son Michael's yard." That piece of grass is 10 feet from the oak tree and, 14 feet from the front steps or something like that. Like that's how detailed and involved he was. And that was that his love, like that was special to him. It wasn't just a blade of grass. At that time, I lived in a very small home. It had been built in like 1950. I think when it was first built, it didn't even have a bathroom on it, and it had been added onto little tiny farmhouse, very, very humble place. And so as I was walking by, I began to look at it and I noticed it just like you would your own home. Like, hey, here's this little humble place. But then at the same time, it was like I was seeing it through different eyes. Like it was almost this beautiful mansion. There was a part of me that was looking at that like this is the most beautiful thing that's ever been. Like this thing has been crafted for me, and some of the details, I could see that when they were made, I'm not saying necessarily they were made for me, but maybe they were in a way too. But as they were made, God knew when these little details in this home were made that I would enjoy them. Like I experienced him knowing that way back when. And also a part of me was just overjoyed. Like this is a mansion. It was like I couldn't have been happier, if I had won the biggest lottery ever or something like that. I just seemed overly blessed. Like it was ridiculous. But then at the same time, I'm looking like this is this little humble house that's definitely not fancy by any stretch of the imagination. Later on, I was able to understand that I was experiencing my natural mind and my spiritual mind that's joined with the Lord. My natural man, so to speak, and my spiritual, I was seeing them both I was seeing through, both views at the same time. Again, I can't put words to this. It was bizarre, and it took me a while to figure this out, what in the heck was going on. So it was like there was a division of what I was seeing. I was seeing kind of naturally and spiritually at the same time. Now again, all this is going on. These waves are crashing over me. Love, acceptance, love, acceptance. At some point as I'm walking, for some reason it enters my mind, what if somebody right now jumps out and like tries to rob you or unalive you? And I laughed. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. Number one, that they thought they could do anything to me because, hey, I'm with my Father. And if they did somehow, I would just be even closer with the Father. And the idea of somebody doing some kind of violence or something, it was absolutely hilarious. It was literally a joke. And so I know that sounds crazy. Like that wasn't, like I was really experiencing that. Just the idea that evil could even be done was just absolutely hilarious to somebody that was, with God. Now, as I'm experiencing this, I start thinking, I was like, man, this sounds like those near-death experiences. And so I started going, wait a minute, hold on. I've heard all of this sort of before. And so I actually looked down on the ground to see if I could make sure my body wasn't there. And it wasn't, I still had everything. Still was in my body and all of that sort of thing. I'll finish it up in part two.